Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating called the heart's compass. It's all about spiritual intuition. Have you ever felt this sudden, completely unexplainable pull to make a certain decision? Or maybe you've had this deep, kind of unsettling feeling in your gut when something just feels off, even when everything looks totally perfect on paper. Well, today, we're going to unpack that hidden compass that literally lives inside all of us. We'll be looking at how we navigate life, not just with our brains and logic, but through this deeply ingrained spiritual intuition, something we honestly tend to completely overlook in our super busy, modern lives. So let's start with a scenario I think we've all run into at some point. Think about this. How do you actually know when a child is lying? I mean, they might have this completely perfect alibi, right? The logical timeline of where those missing cookies went might be totally flawless, but instantly, you just know. It completely defies pure logic. It's this immediate, undeniable gut feeling screaming that they aren't telling the truth. And here's the thing, that isn't your brain crunching data. It's something much, much deeper. And it's actually happening to us all the time. You see, our sixth sense is actually highly active in our day-to-day lives, even if we just brush it off as some kind of illusion. Think about it. Have you ever been texting someone miles and miles away, and you can just instantly sense their mood right through the screen? Or how about how you automatically feel this heavy sinking sadness the very second you step into a funeral, before anyone even says a single word to you? There's actually this great example from our source material about a husband and wife driving separately to the Lulu Mall. The traffic was just incredibly heavy, but guess what? The wife arrived first. She wasn't speeding or anything like that. She literally just used her intuition to seamlessly navigate shortcuts and weave right through the congestion. We do this stuff all the time. We just don't always give it a proper name.
Now, the really crucial point here is how we actually define this whole phenomenon. In spiritual terms, this is very often connected to the concept of fitra. Think of fitra as this inbuilt internal compass. It's almost like you have a built-in communication center located right inside your heart. It's exactly what gives us that beautiful, almost heavenly, out-of-this-world feeling when we do something genuinely good. And on the flip side, it's that tight, really anxious warning signal we get when we start to stray off the right path. It is literally the voice of your heart, actively communicating with the divine.
But here's the problem. This incredible internal compass is facing a massive modern epidemic. Let's be real. In today's world, we are endlessly distracted. We rely entirely on logic because, frankly, we desperately want to be in control of absolutely every variable in our lives. But because of this noisy, super-controlling ego we develop, we end up deliberately opposing the truth our own heart is trying to tell us. And the result? The heart just shuts down. We become completely unable to hear it. So we end up walking around with this lingering feeling of emptiness. It's kind of like when you visit a profoundly spiritual place, say Mecca, and you suddenly realize there's this deep spiritual connection you're feeling that is just completely missing from your everyday life. And this perfectly brings us to the ultimate difference between humans and artificial intelligence. We hear so much nowadays about AI taking over everything, right? But consider this for a second. AI operates entirely on mere intelligence derived from past data. It has absolutely zero intuition, none. Humans, on the other hand, possess this deep internal compass, this amazing sixth sense. Because pure logic and data can be so easily replicated by machines now, human intuition is honestly going to become the absolute most sought-after skill in the future. It is without a doubt our truest competitive advantage.
And hey, this isn't just some abstract theory. History's greatest innovators relied heavily on this. We've all heard the stories about brilliant minds like Steve Jobs and Albert Einstein dropping out of college. But what we usually miss in those stories is why they actually did it. They had a profound inner calling. They didn't just sit there and look at the logical data of college degrees and standard career paths. No way. They deliberately tapped into their deep intuition to completely bypass traditional logic, follow their heart's compass, and ultimately go on to do the impossible.
So the true risk of ignoring this internal compass is actually beautifully captured in this really powerful Quranic metaphor from Surah Al-Baqarah. It describes people who only walk forward when the lightning flashes, but the second darkness falls around them, they just freeze and stand still. It warns that God could easily take away their physical hearing and sight. And the really profound takeaway for us here is that right now we rely almost entirely on what we can physically see and hear. But think about it. If we lose those physical senses, what actually guides us then? If our spiritual compass is broken, we are left completely in the dark. We become spiritually blind and totally paralyzed.
Which, of course, brings us to a really critical question.
If we are currently blinded by all the endless noise of the modern world and our own loud egos, how in the world do we actually recover this lost connection? How do we escape this overwhelming noise of our purely logical, totally data-driven lives and actually tune back into the frequency of our own hearts?
Well, tuning back in definitely requires some deliberate, actionable steps. First off, we absolutely have to force ourselves to slow down and relax, especially before major decisions, like a big exam or a huge job interview. Remember, intuition happens in these quick flashes, and you honestly can't catch a flash if you're constantly sprinting. Second, you need to enter a deep, meditative state. This is exactly why practices like the Istikar prayer, reciting the Quran, or even just taking a few very deep, focused breaths are so incredibly vital. Finally, and this is probably the most important step, you must apply a zero-ego state. The more ego we hold on to, the louder and noisier our internal dialogue gets. Actually shutting down that ego is what allows us to finally hear those quiet, really beautiful flashes of intuition.
Now, a very natural question pops up right about here, and it's a super important caveat. What if we actually manage to quiet down, we listen to our heart, and it tells us to do something completely wrong? Like, what if it's screaming at us to eat an entire family-sized box of junk food, or to impulse buy something we definitely can't afford, or just to lash out at someone in anger? How do we actually differentiate between a mere basic physical desire and actual genuine spiritual guidance?
All right, so this is exactly where we have to apply what we call the final filter. We definitely don't just blindly obey every single random whisper that pops into our heads. Instead, we have to take that intuitive flash and really check it. You have to ask yourself, does this actually make sense? And more crucially, does it align with our larger ultimate vision? Now, in the context of our source material, that ultimate vision is specifically the desire for the hereafter. We should only be accepting and acting on the internal inputs that genuinely align with our highest long-term spiritual goals.
Let's actually ground all this theory in a really relatable, practical scenario. Just imagine you're walking down the street, minding your own business, and someone approaches you asking for charity. We've all been there. It happens all the time. But how do you actually know if their need is genuine? Pure intelligence and logic completely fail you here. I mean, you can't exactly run a background check right there on the sidewalk, right? In that specific moment, only a tuned-in intuition, that internal compass directly connected to the divine, can truly discern the truth of the situation. It really proves that to successfully navigate everyday life, we absolutely 100% require this inner sense.
Ultimately, as this really striking passage from Surah Ashura reminds us, God has complete, total knowledge of what is in our hearts. He knows our true intuitions, our quietest whispers, and our deepest, truest intentions. It also serves as this powerful reminder that the truth is ultimately vindicated. Spiritually, a sealed heart, a heart driven purely by ego and logic, is one that's unfortunately cut off from this profound, guiding divine truth.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought for you to take away today. The tools are already there. That compass is literally built into your very nature right now. The real question is whether you are willing to quiet your ego, take a step back from the endless, exhausting noise of modern logic, and actually listen to it. I want you to look into your own heart today. Ask yourself, right now, beneath all the distractions and the endless data, can it recognize the truth? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I seriously challenge you to test out your own internal compass this week. See what happens.